Welcome to the WAIR Chats podcast, a series where we dive into the conversations surrounding all facets of e-commerce and the people working to make it a more sustainable and productive industry for all. My name is Greg Moore, founder and CEO of WAIR, and your host for today's podcast. As an e-commerce merchant, do you ever wonder who's on your site, what's their experience, and how you can improve it? Join us as we talk to Chris Pinchot, the co-founder and CTO of Status, as he shares how Status helps merchants know every shopper by name.
Hi there, my name is Greg Moore. I'm the CEO of WAIR, and we are here with another episode of WAIR Chats. So with me, I've got Chris. Chris, do I say Pinchot or Pinchot?
Pinchot, hard T.
Pinchot, perfect. I've got Chris Pinchot with me from Status, and they've got a really exciting story, so I'm super excited to share this time with you. But Chris, if you're okay, can you kind of give us a background of yourself and like what got you guys towards the founding team in Status?
Yeah, would love to. So I'm the CTO and co-founder of Status. I work with my partners, Dustin Tevis and Joe Van Sena. We started this as more of I guess the background starts all the way to leaving Loop. We all came from Loop. We were all part of the original founding team of Loop Returns. And for those who don't know, Loop Returns is a returns and exchanges company built on Shopify. And we gained a ton of experience from that. We had a lot of shared thoughts on like what the next thing could be. And when I left, probably it's about 2 years ago now, I left Loop first. It had kind of outgrown me, if that makes sense. When you're kind of in on the ground floor, you're used to making a lot of impact. We were getting close to triple digits as far as employees. And I just felt like, man, I want to be on that ground floor again. I want to try and find something new.
It's hard to see a company progress in that and then know that that's what you love, right? But you still love the company, like you love what you built. So I totally hear that.
Absolutely. It was hard to walk away from, truly. And it's still a company I love very much, still very close with a lot of people there. Mm-hmm. I ended up stepping away and looking for the next thing. I spent roughly a year searching. I built like 4 different apps. I still have a list. I have a fun thing I do where like for every emoji, I try to make like a little company idea, and I have a list of probably like 200 companies. I'm like, maybe one of these will work.
I love that. I've never ever heard anything like that before. How in the world did you come up with that?
Can I be honest? One day I plan to, I hope to be an investor, and that would be like kind of my fun little, like, I don't know what you'd call it, not niche, but fun little thing to have like a blog of, hey, these are all company ideas. If you want to build it, please build it and I'll send you money and hopefully I can take a piece. But awesome. That's a ways off. Still in building mode. Thank you.
Cool concept. So you know that this is my favorite emoji. I can't tell you why, but you know the little blue face guy with like his hands like this and he's like a ghost?
Love that one.
Yeah. Do you have a company for that one already?
I'm going to pull it up. I don't have one for that. Sorry to disappoint. Okay. I can give you a random one though, if you want.
Yeah.
There was one. Let's see. Just pick a random one. There was one that where you pay professionals in your field for like 30 minutes of their time, kind of like I don't know what you'd compare it to, but when you get shout outs from favorite celebrities like that, that kind of
influencer. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It would be more or less like that, because I've heard so many stories of executives finding people in their field that are like a few ranks above, and they're like, $2,000 is worth 30 minutes of your time.
Yeah.
Like truly just to learn a little bit from you. And maybe there's, anyway, getting in the weeds. Back to the genesis of Status. But so what had happened, I was a year out of Loop. Mm-hmm. I didn't have a bunch of money saved up. I was kind of getting to the, not much in my bank account. And I said, all right, trying to start all these businesses was good for a while. I need to pick up some freelance work to make sure I can keep the lights on. I picked up a freelance job that was given to me from it was one of the original Loop merchants. So my name had been thrown their way. They're like, yeah, we need help with this account/membership project we have going. And after I started digging into it, I'm like, whoa, there is something so much bigger here. So I pitched back to them. I said, what if this was an app instead? Like, what if we blew this thing out? And they're like, yeah, we'd be interested in that. And that's immediately, I asked Joe and Dust just for help. And that turned into, as soon as we started talking, they had some amazing ideas. And then it turned into, all right, we need to band together and start figuring out what this thing is.
Yeah.
And I think my favorite moment, and I can talk about what Status is a little more after this.
Yeah, sure.
Was, and I'm going to go back to my Loop knowledge. We were pitching Loop originally when returns and exchanges wasn't a huge thing. And I used to sit in with calls with Corbett, the original CEO of Loop, and we would ask companies to tell us about their experience with returns. And it was always, it eats up so much cost, such bad user experience. And then they'd always say this one line that caught me that was, well, that's just the way it is. And at that moment, I kind of developed this thesis of as soon as you hear that, it's just a banner for opportunity.
Yeah. Totally.
And so we're kind of doing research on the customer account, specifically in Shopify. And me, Dust, and Joe, we're in a room, we're pitching the companies we know from Loop, and Joe gets a picture of their account page and pulls it up and asks basically like, why don't you care about this? Because that's kind of the sentiment around all customer accounts right now, or at least the ones with the merchants we talk to. And then they said the magic words. They said, well, no one cares about accounts. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And that's when the light bulb flicked and said, this is where we start. And from that, Status was born.
That's awesome. I love that story. I think it's really interesting because, I've been in the entrepreneurial / founder VC world for probably almost a decade now. And one thing that I hear over and over and over again is that there are people that are going to have like industry domain expertise. And if you can build a team around that and then keep that team together and then start driving and just like solving problem after problem after problem with that, it's just such an easier way to do business, right? Because you already have all the connections, you've already got the knowledge of the space, like you know what to listen for and what really to build. And I laugh because my journey was so stupidly different than that. I chose 3 totally unrelated spaces. And so every single time I've got to kind of build that knowledge from the beginning, but mad respect for just being like, yeah, it's e-commerce. It's going to be e-commerce enablement all the way. And I'm just going to look for all the problems here and just like go solve them. I mean, I think it's just really, really cool.
Yeah. I'm fortunate to know a couple of people, thankfully, that, really care. I think we all care very much about like the customer, the end user.
Yeah.
And when we start with that problem first, everything else just kind of lights its own path.
Yeah, I love that. So Chris, maybe take a step back and tell me a little bit about like what is Status, what does Status do, and then maybe a little bit like the valid business reasons, like what does a customer get out of installing Status? Like what's the KPI value driver for them?
Absolutely. I think the headline right now for Status, the headline is we're solving anonymous shopping. How many people are landing on your store and you have no idea who they are? And you do when they make a purchase. You get some of their information, you get their address, you get the transaction, maybe you understand a little more what they like. But with Status, our goal is to take that and not only increase the amount of people signing in before they purchase, but understanding them as they have a longer journey with your site. So not just the first purchase, not just the second purchase, but everything in between. We want to make sure that the customer gets value out of their interactions with your website. An example I like to give is a homepage is kind of just throwing spaghetti at the wall on most sites.
Yeah.
Please attach to something, please like something we like.
Sure.
After you're on there the first time, after you select a product and a size specifically, why are we asking like what size you are again after that? Why are we making you choose, I guess is the question. Status aims to solve that. Specifically, for the customer, we're going to give them shopping tools and shopping experiences they couldn't get otherwise. And for the merchant, we're going to enrich their data with all of these interactions and experience that we're saving for the customer.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, I think that, you guys probably have better statistics than I do on this, but it's a very, very small percentage of shoppers that actually authenticate on any site. And like you said, that's normally the shoppers that buy something are the ones that authenticate it. The ones that don't are even less likely to authenticate. Do you have any numbers on that by chance?
We don't have any specifically yet. We're still running through our beta program, and we're still trying to prove some statistics that are based around repeat purchases and getting the people that would already log in to log in.
Yeah.
But also, as we're seeing more and more people log in because we're lowering the barrier to entry, we're getting more data, and
Sure.
we're going to have better stats on that.
Okay, that makes sense. That's really cool. So talk to me a bit about like the beginnings of the business, right? So let's say I'm a founder, I have an app idea, I want to come into the e-commerce space, but maybe I don't have the connections that are there or whatever. Like, what are like the first 3 or 4 steps that you would really recommend that I go through to start to build up some groundswell and build up some traction in that sense?
Absolutely. I think it's the first thing you should do is fix a problem. I think identifying a problem, or having, in my case, having someone identify a problem to me via a freelance project,
Sure.
it really lays the groundwork for, all right, I can provide value immediately to this one person. Does this problem happen to anyone else?
Mm-hmm.
And then if it does, what does that surface area look like in e-commerce? Is that affecting 20% of shops, 30%? Figure out if anyone else has done it right after that and see how they're doing it. And then creating a battle plan based on, what you can provide the people around you immediately. And then looking at a competitive analysis and saying, all right, how do I do this differently than everyone else? Because I think most problems are being addressed, but I don't think they're being addressed perfectly. And I don't know if they ever will be. There's always room, right?
Yeah. When you guys looked at the space, I'm sure there's other companies doing this, and it's sort of an innate feature of Shopify in a sense.
Yeah.
But like you said, like the problems aren't being perfectly addressed. Does that level of like competition, whether real or just budget based, does that kind of scare you guys, or does that kind of invite you in and say, actually, this means that there's bigger opportunity. We just have to figure out how to navigate it?
I think we have some core philosophies that differ from our competition. And also our competition was very confusing because, like you said, there is a native account in Shopify. So why would people want to replace it? And I think finding the reasons people want to replace it helped us kind of carve our own path. And then there were other companies who had been replacing the account, but they had never gone past seemingly like a few hundred merchants. We looked at why that is, and I think it's because to service most people, you need to have you need to accommodate for a lot of things. And we're taking what we call like a Switzerland approach when we build this. It's like we are building tools and inviting everyone in, and that includes Shopify. Like there are plenty. One example I like to give is there's a lot of customer apps that allow you to sign in via Google, Facebook, but they overwrite the customer's password to do that. It's like a hacky workaround.
Yeah.
And obviously there's going to be a lot of merchants that have problems with that, and it makes it so you really can't get off the app once you start.
Yeah. That's right.
So like, for example, a requirement of ours is you have to be Shopify Plus to use it, because we need the APIs to work with Shopify to make sure we're never messing up your data. We're keeping Shopify apprised of everything we're changing and doing, so they're happy. And the merchant can immediately use the data without having to learn a whole new system that we build, right?
Right. No, that's awesome. I think it's a really challenging strategic framework to think through. Do I build a tool to help you understand the data, or do I give you the data so that you can integrate that into your tools, right? And I know we've struggled with that a lot, but mostly in thinking, right? I mean, in execution, like we're generally pretty open, but in thinking about it, right, there's always this notion of protectivism, right? I want to be able to protect this so that nobody else can do it. So therefore, I want to own this and build these dashboards myself. But then you're never going to be able to truly answer all of the questions that your customers have, right? And then you're building, then you have these entire technical teams building all of this analytics and insights technology.
Absolutely.
Which isn't necessarily a core piece of the product, right? So it's a really challenging problem. And I see a lot of entrepreneurs, really struggle with that. And normally they'll go one way and be like, nope. And then they'll start about face and pivot and then go a different direction. But do you guys see the sort of the same thing, I'm assuming?
Absolutely. Everyone needs something different. It's always slightly, we need this, something with Loop even. We had so many reports we had to build specifically for certain people just to make sure they had the data the way they wanted it. And we are starting with a methodology of opening the gates as fast as possible for the merchant, for the customer, everyone. If you're willing to give us data, we want to give it back to you in the best way we can. So it does require to build some custom tooling and some very elaborate tooling to allow for that type of analysis, analytics, anything to do with customer data and interaction. And frankly, we're not there yet. We don't have any of these tools public, but it's actually what we're working on right now to try to inform our beta merchants of more or less a return on investment, right? They're paying for this tool. What is the reaction? How are customers? Are they logging in more? Are they buying more? Repeat purchase, AOV, all those things. So we're looking to dig that up right now.
So one of the biggest, you kind of touched on this as one of the KPIs, and you use sizing as an example there, right? Because that's our space, right? Is that
absolutely
sizing is just hard, and then consumers just have a really hard time understanding which size is theirs. So, how have you seen, right, your ability to sort of authenticate the user and then track that information such that it creates betterment in their shopping experience from a sizing perspective? And then also, do you see that as one of the biggest problems that apparel companies face, the apparel e-commerce companies face?
Absolutely. And I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of that. Again, we saw it at Loop. We saw how many returns and exchanges happen simply because of the wrong size. They didn't have the right information. And, to your credit, I think preventing the interaction is better for everyone, right? If they know the size beforehand, they don't have to go through the cost. The merchant doesn't have to eat the shipping or, and what we're trying to do, we have our first level of customer tools that we have active now. I think the biggest one related to sizing is we are actually saving everything you put to your cart and putting it into a wish list. So this is kind of funny technology in a sense where I believe Joe thought it up while looking at his wife shop. And every time she go to a store, she'd shove 10 things in the cart and be like, well, I want to look at them later, right?
Totally.
And, those are all likely in her correct sizing. Now in status, we listen for that. We watch that. And then when a customer opens their status profile, it says, hey, you had a lot of this stuff in your cart. Here it is again, just in case you want to reference it for later. We believe that could reduce some sizing difficulties or, decreasing the amount of interaction it takes to get those items back into a customer's cart. But the phase 2, phase 3, as we move forward, we plan to enrich the customer profile for the merchant to personalize their site, to automatically be able to pre-select options all based around the customer that's logged into their store.
Oh, that's super cool. It's one of the things that we're thinking about is so one thing that we realize is that sizing on a per product basis is different, right? So if I buy this blue shirt versus a polo, I may wear 2 totally different sizes. And if I go to blazers, it's a whole different size. So it's inherently complicated in that sense. But one of the things that we've been thinking about a lot is kind of you can think about slamming an Algolia and an Us and maybe an Octane together, where you can then start to And I think even status in this sense, from an authentication and then a storage perspective, to maintain this across a user profile. But basically, you have a consumer come in, they answer like 2 or 3 questions, and then all of a sudden, the catalog behind this thing starts to dynamically list products that are the highest likelihood of being added to cart if you have them available in the appropriate size, right? And so you like
That's fantastic.
all this stuff together. And one of the things that we've been thinking there is I've got this notion of what I call the doom scroll, right? So if you go to like a larger e-commerce site, you're sitting
Sure.
like, you're scrolling down this stuff every day. And it's like, that's just a horrible experience. Like, I know I want some pants. I know I generally like earthy tones. So like, and I'm not going to go too crazy, right? Not like a straight cut.
Yeah.
I kind of know that, right? So all I need to know then is, do you have what I think I want? And maybe flare in a few other things. And what size do you have them in, so that I can buy them when they fit me? So yeah, it's really, really cool, like personalization thing that I think would take some collaboration from a couple different parties, but it could be an entirely different shopping experience in that sense, which is cool.
What a fantastic example of like a customer profile being able to be enriched by like all these other tools. And that's exactly what we're going for, is like, please work with us we'll have an open API, and whatever you spit at us, we're going to give you something back as well. So we can start facilitating, again, a better customer experience overall.
One other question from you've mentioned a couple of times that you guys are in like a beta program, which is kind of generally means, at least for us, when we were in our beta program, we're kind of still learning the product, we're still learning the problem, and we're really figuring out how to hone in on that and then build what is needed for like an MVP or something, right? And then there's a go-to-market strategy around acquiring beta customers and then scaling it up to like a V1 customer base.
Absolutely.
How do you guys think about that? Like, what do you call a beta? What are some of the expectations that you have in that phase before you move on to the next stage? And then how do your go-to-market strategies change based on that?
Yeah, great question. Well, let me give you some information about where we're at currently. We have 10 merchants right now. 4 of them are over 30 million in GMV. And that is pretty much who we've segmented into the beta program. And I think Joe's going to kill me just for referencing it so much, because we're technically over it. We've gone past the hurdle, which feels great. So I think I have a good answer to your question. It really is about making sure our product works well and is doing what we say it's going to do. And especially for something like logging people in, we can't have that breaking. There are people who have loyalty programs behind these logins that if they can't log in, now we're avoiding a sale. We're stopping someone from pushing through because they're not going to check out without knowing they can use their points or the get points. So our beta program was really to have a few trusted people who understood, okay, this isn't going to be perfect, but hey, it beats the hell out of my normal account, and we understand the vision of what you guys are doing. Happy to put it on our site. We've done that it's been about like 2-3 months. And I think we've ironed out all the kinks, and it could have gone on longer, frankly. But what happened is we had people just knocking down our door. We've maybe done a little bit of outbound. All of our merchants and all of we have, I think, I don't want to exaggerate this number, but I do think it's 20 potential agency partners already who have just beat down Joe's inbox and said, what are you guys doing? I think this is going to be great. Can we work together?
That's cool.
So it kind of forced us out of beta. We had too many people asking. We were limiting it too much. And it's, we're like, well, if people want it, and I think Joe has actually turned multiple people away and said, hey, typically it's people who aren't like a sizing vertical or something we can really assist with and stuff we have experience with. And we're like, we'd love to talk to you later, not right now. And they just come back at us so hard. And they're like, we don't care. Put it on our site, please. And it's been such a blessing, because I really think it shows like product market fit maybe is here.
That's cool.
So
do you think that, so I mean, there's a bit of status there, right? pun intended, but that you guys have in the industry, right? Because you were part of Loop, which was, I mean, really, frankly, a really nice success story in that sense. And I'm sure you created a lot of connections and relationships. Do you think it's more about that, more about the product or the problem that's being solved, or obviously some balance of the two? I wonder how you think about that in a sense. And I'm thinking through the lens of like Bob, who has never necessarily been a part of e-commerce. Like, is that playbook available to Bob in that sense?
It's hard to see. These are things that kind of work for us really well, and I'm not sure. It's hard to gauge how much it helps, but I will say I think I'm not sure how many of our merchants were actually knew us from Loop or heard about us from Loop. Obviously, like a LinkedIn connection or something like that when we're posting about the product, I think that opens the door, but I'm not sure if it's always, these people were at Loop. We need to talk to them.
Got it.
That being said, don't know. I can't say I'm confident in that answer. It could be, a lot of that, that trust from the Loop days carrying over.
Totally.
I'm not sure how to answer, like, what advice to give. Only that maybe I'm sounding like a broken record, but if you're solving a problem for someone that someone else needs solved, just asking them to reach out, the person you're solving the problem for. So let's say you have brand A have an issue, asking them, hey, do you know anyone else that's been dealing with this? Can I please get an intro? And starting that cycle, I think, is really helpful.
Yeah. It's funny. In the last two businesses I ran, I mean, digital marketing and advertising was just gold. I mean, it was just like, we could literally just turn the crank and we're like, okay, this month we're going to spend like $20,000 in like advertising, and then it's going to drive in like several $100,000 of value. This business in e-commerce is different. It's a very tight-knit network. And I think the referral side of this is really, really interesting, because it's like customer referral, agency referral, even affiliate or influencer referrals, right? And there's a big set of tool stack for that, like Crossbeam and Partner Stack and whatever else. But it's really cool. The more we started to lean into that, really, the more our really prospecting started to just accelerate. And it's been pretty crazy in that sense. It sounds like you guys are kind of feeling the same way about that.
Yeah, definitely.
I think we're coming up close to time here, but I'd love to ask you two more questions. So one is, what keeps you up at night, right? When you're sitting in bed and you're like, I want to go to sleep, but I've got something on my mind. Like, is it some big problem, or is it like this consistent thing that's going over and over again?
I'm going to sound like such a lame-o.
You're like, I sleep perfect. It's amazing. Don't talk to me about
No. Absolutely not. I definitely don't. But I get very obsessive with what I'm working on. I'm a project-based human. So it does relate. I think, again, this sounds cheesy, but the state of e-commerce has me kind of freaked out, especially because I'm in it. I think we're at a pivotal point, and I think people are going to say it's not because of the metrics. The metrics on adoption of e-commerce and the amount of money running through it, it's actually pretty good. People freaked out because it dipped a little bit, but it's linear. It's still up and to the right. Yep, we're looking good there. I think, especially based on what could be pending, our brands aren't exactly sure yet of how it's going to shake out with their customers. Retention is going to be key. We are going to have basically an explosion in, hey, the customer experience needs to be really good. And we saw that with Loop. With WAIR, absolutely, like making sure that we're not doing the back and forth of returns, like trying to be preventative and making sure the customers know that, hey, we care about your experience and we don't want you to be a one-time customer. We want you to come back. We know you don't have a bunch of options to shop online, and how do we streamline that for you? How do we create experiences for you that make you want to come back and be loyal to the brand? And I don't think it's opening an account page and seeing a list of your transaction history.
Yeah.
I think it's, my size, who I am as a person. You've reached out to me personally, like all these tools that are being built. I think are going to become more and more important because if you're just drop shipping something from China and that is your whole business, but you have a great brand with like flash, I don't know how long that survives.
I think that's really interesting. I mean, it's funny. There's a lot of firms out there that are looking at kind of the gamification of online shopping. And the more that I think about that, the more that I hear about how people are doing, I'm like, I don't know that that's really what people want. I don't know that they really want like this crazy AR VR experience and all this stuff that's like totally future facing. I think what they want is to be seen, right? You know me, you know what I like, and you can contort your shopping experience to me, to cater to me personally. And so I'm really bullish on the firms that are focusing on that type of experience. And I tend to be a bit of a futurist, but I feel like that's like the right flavor for like the next 5 years, is really just leaning into how do I make Chris feel great when he's shopping on my site, right?
Absolutely.
And that's, I don't know. I'm very, very bullish in that space right now. So it's cool.
I bring up this analogy, but it might be too much, but do you use TikTok?
No, I'm not a TikTok guy.
Good for you. That is great. I use it. I fall into the trap, and I think anyone who's used it knows you open it and you're there for 2 hours and it goes by like that.
Yeah.
One thing you're never worried about when you open it is the content going to be catered to me? Because we all know the algorithm is working really, really well. It's a point. I think I'm not sure people understand that their websites can be that for a customer if everything's positioned correctly. Right. They can drop on a store and then they see, oh, they have customer accounts, and they understand what that means in this new future state. They're like, I know when I sign up, the first things I see, those are going to be items I know I'm going to like. So why wouldn't I sign up quickly? Yeah. So recreating that kind of mentality and effect, not to waste your time like TikTok does. I think it's more of using that technology for good, maybe. Yeah, is how I see it. But
TikTok for good, I like it. I think that's the new slogan.
I'm biased, certainly, but I do believe it.
It also draws kind of this distinction too. Like every time you log into Twitter, to TikTok, to Snap, to whatever else, you're authenticated, right? Which means that those companies can learn and serve you great content that adheres to what you like. But for some reason, and I mean, this is why you're here, this is the problem you're solving, right? But we don't think of shopping the same way. We don't think of shopping as this like authenticatable service that can be better if we give them a little bit of information. And I'm really, there's kind of two things that I'm watching in that space. One is, does a singular brand create enough of an experience or enough content or whatever else to truly engage a shopper? Or is this really sort of need to be more of a marketplace initiative where I have the ability to serve like tons of variation to the shopper, but keep it personalized? But either which way it ends up going, the reality is that authentication has to happen for any of that to be available.
No doubt.
So with that, I commend what you guys are building. I just think it's really cool.
Thanks so much. And those are very, very thoughtful questions. I do think those are, to be seen. Yeah, we'll know in a few years, maybe, when it becomes more popular. But very cool.
All right, Chris, my last question, obviously been very engaged in the conversation, but I've been staring at that picture behind you the whole time. You got to give me a breakdown on it. This looks awesome.
So before I was a developer, I really liked animation, and I tried right out of college. I tried to start an animation studio.
Okay.
Didn't work out, clearly. But that is from Kurzgesagt, the channel that does a lot of, if you look on YouTube, they do a lot of like informational science related content. That was one of their first art prints they did, and one of the first places I applied out of college to learn more about animation. Okay. I saved the prints, and it's actually two, and I just smashed them in a frame together.
That's awesome. It's almost like one's the negative of the other, but I don't know. I love those sort of background pieces, especially in this like video conference world, right? It's like, oh, that looks so intriguing. I had to ask you about that, but no,
I'm glad. Yeah, you're the first person to ask, but
no, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah, first person, but I appreciate it.
This has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for your time. I know I learned a ton. Really excited about what you guys are building, the way you think about e-commerce. And yeah, we're definitely in chats to be a part of it together. So I think that we'll continue those. But overall, just thank you for coming on, and loved it.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thanks so much for hanging out, Greg. I learned a lot too.